The coconut nut is a giant nut. If you eat too much, you get very fat.
Now the coconut nut is a big, big nut, but this delicious nut is not a nut. It's the cocoa fruit.
It's the cocoa fruit
Of the cocoa tree.
of the cocoa tree.
From the cocoa palm family.
Ay, 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 ay,
There are
ay.
so many uses of the coconut tree. You can build a big house for the family. All you need is to find the coconut man. If he cuts the tree, he gets the fruits free.
It's the cocoa fruit.
It's the cocoa fruit
Of the cocoa tree.
of the cocoa tree.
From the cocoa palm family.
Ay, 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 ay. The coconut nut. Ooh la la.
I'm telling you.
The coconut bark for the kitchen floor. If you save some of it, you can build a door. Now the coconut trunk, do not throw this junk. If you save some of it, you'll have a second floor. The coconut wood is very good. It can stand 20 years if you pray it would. Now the coconut root, to tell you the truth, you can throw it or use it as
Firewood.
The coconut leaves good shade, gives for the roof, for the walls, up against the eaves. Now the coconut fruit, say my relatives, make good cannonballs up against the thieves.
It's the cocoa fruit.
It's the cocoa fruit
Of the cocoa tree.
of the cocoa tree.
From the cocoa palm family.
The coconut nut is a giant nut. If you eat too much, you get very fat. Now the coconut nut is a big, big nut, but this delicious nut is not a nut. The coconut nut is a giant nut. If you eat too much, you get very fat. Now the coconut nut is a big, big nut, but this delicious nut is not a nut.
It's the cocoa fruit.
It's the cocoa fruit
Of the cocoa tree.
of the cocoa tree.
From the cocoa palm family.
Ay, ay, ay,
It's
ay.
the cocoa fruit.
It's the cocoa fruit
Of the cocoa tree.
of the cocoa tree.
From the cocoa palm family.
Ay, 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 ay.
It's the cocoa fruit.
It's the cocoa fruit
Of the cocoa tree.
of the cocoa tree.
From the cocoa palm family.
Ole!
Good morning in the Americas and good evening in the Philippines. Welcome to this inaugural science webinar of the Embassy of the Philippines in Washington, D.C. We hope you enjoyed that fun introductory video about the coconut composed by a national artist of the Philippines, Mr. Ryan Cayabyab, and performed by a singing group that he formed called Smoky Mountain. I am Dr. Joy Havelosa, the Agriculture Attaché of the Embassy, and I'll be your MC for today's event. Together with the Science Diplomacy team of the Embassy, we have specially prepared for you this inaugural science webinar on the occasion of National Coconut Day in the USA, celebrated each June 26th of the year. Our Philippine Ambassador to the United States of America, His Excellency Jose Manuel Romualdez, could not personally be with us live this morning in Washington as he is in another engagement. But he would like to share with us this video message.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen in the United States, and good evening to those who are joining in from the Philippines. I welcome all of you to this inaugural science webinar organized by the Office of Agriculture Attaché in collaboration with the Science Diplomacy team of our Philippine Embassy in Washington, D.C. We envision organizing more of these informative science webinars in the future to showcase the work of Filipino scientists as a means of disseminate and facilitate understanding of science-based information. Such webinars may also help bridge research collaboration between Filipino, American, and other international scientists. In today's event, two highly respected Filipino scientists from the Philippines will share their initial findings as they explore the effects of virgin coconut oil, or VCO, on suspect and probable cases of COVID-19 last year. They will also expound on the hypothesis for the effect or the efficacy of VCO and the possible areas of collaboration. Joining us are Dr. Imelda Angeles Agdepa, the Director of the Philippines Food and Nutrition Research Institute, the principal research arm of the government in food and nutrition under the Department of Science and Technology, and Dr. Fabian Antonio Toby Dairit, the academician elected to the National Academy of Science and Technology, the President of the Integrated Chemists of the Philippines, and Professor Emeritus of the Department of Chemistry of the Ateneo de Manila University. We have also invited an Emmy and International Freddie Award-winning digital media, TV and film producer, Ms. Clara Wilkerson, as our guest moderator to help steer the discussion and field in questions, including those from the audience, to generate crucial information and active engagement on this subject. We are especially hosting this event today on the occasion of the National Coconut here in the United States. On this same day in 2019, the Register at the National Day calendar proclaimed National Coconut Day to be observed on June 26th annually. The Coconut Coalition of the Americas, or CCA, founded National Coconut Day to celebrate the mighty coconut and increase awareness of its benefits. The coalition was founded in 2017 when coconut industry stakeholders came together to steward maintaining high quality standards and preserving the integrity of a wide array of coconut products available in the Americas. On this third day of celebrating the National Coconut Day in the United States, the Coconut Coalition of the Americas embarked on an initiative that will provide adequate interior lighting to the homes of coconut farmers without access to electricity in order to illuminate their homes for their children's schoolwork and evening activities. Primex Isle de Coco Foundation and Charity Incorporated, a Philippine corporation, together with the Coconut Coalition of the Americas, will provide solar panels that can power at least 3 light sources for each house. This initiative is in honor of the National Coconut Day, which has been named by the CCA as a Lighting Up Lives and runs from June 14 to the 30th, 2021. You may go to the Coconut Coalition of the Americas website should you wish to get involved. This science webinar is our embassy's modest contribution in honoring National Coconut Day in the United States as we work on helping steward the promotion of facts about coconut oil and coconut products and its benefits. Coconut, as also known as the tree of life, continues to be one of the most important crops of the Philippines. Coconut products remain to be a major export product of the country, and the country continues to be a top producer and exporter of the coconut products worldwide. Finally, I wish to acknowledge our colleagues, friends, and partners who are joining this inaugural science webinar focusing on virgin coconut oil in the time of COVID. This includes friends in the United States government, such as the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the State Department, the Philippine American Academy of Scientists and Engineers, the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine, tongue-tied there, and Health Sciences, invitees of the U.S.-Philippine Society, the George Washington University Hospital Women's Board, colleagues in various foreign embassies in Washington, D.C., including ASEAN embassies, colleagues at all the other foreign service posts in the United States and the Americas, and everyone tuning in on Zoom and Facebook from the Philippines and the rest of the world. May we all be able to work together in supporting science and research that have excellent potential to help light up the lives of our communities. Maraming salamat at mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Thank you to Ambassador Romualdez for that video message. At this point, I was supposed to introduce our guest moderator, Ms. Clara Wilkerson, and pass on the floor to her. However, she had an emergency this morning, which unfortunately could not allow her to join us. So let me now proceed in introducing our first resource person, Dr. Imelda Angeles Agdepa. Dr. Agdepa is a director of the Department of Science and Technology, Food and Nutrition Research Institute, and conferred as Scientist II by the National Academy of Science and Technology and the Civil Service Commission. She conducted numerous community trials that contributed significantly to the improvement in nutritional status of Filipinos. Among the greatest accomplishments are the researches translated into laws in the Philippines. Dr. Imelda Agdepa completed her Master's of Science degree in nutrition from the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education for Tropical Medicine, Regional Center for Community Nutrition at the University of Indonesia, and a PhD in Community Nutrition cum laude from the same university. She has been a short-term consultant in Indonesia and in the National Institute of Nutrition, Hanoi, Vietnam, and a project leader in the conduct of national nutrition surveys. Her most recent research is the use of virgin coconut oil among probable and suspect cases of COVID-19, which she will be discussing with us today. She received a number of awards: the Pag-asa Award, awarded by the President of the Philippines, the Alberto Romualdez Outstanding Health Research Award, national category, and the Clara Ruth Darby Award by the Nutritionist Dietitians Association of the Philippines. Without further ado, Dr. Agdepa, we look forward to your presentation.
Yes, to Dr. Joy, good day to you, and to our Ambassador Romualdez, to the heads of posts of the Philippine Foreign Services in the Americas, the Coconut Coalition in the Americas, as well as the U.S. government and private sector representatives. A pleasant day to you. So allow me to actually present my piece for today on the virgin coconut oil. So VCO against COVID-19. So as the pandemic continues to strain both the country's health system and economy, where treatments and vaccines is short in supply, an abundant locally produced antiviral food supplement known as virgin coconut oil is now being explored as an adjunctive supplement for COVID-19 patients. Considered as one of the world's most popular superfood, can VCO be our weapon in fighting the COVID-19 virus? To find out, we at the Food and Nutrition Research Institute evaluated the beneficial effects of virgin coconut oil to persons under investigation. We conducted a clinical trial where we introduced VCO into the dietary intake of COVID-19 patients to see whether they will be able to recover from faster as compared to other patients not consuming VCO. There were 57 suspect and probable cases of COVID-19 who participated in this study. They underwent the 28-day intervention period. The investigators randomly assigned the volunteers into either the intervention or the VCO group or the control group, in which the VCO group had 29 cases and the control group had 28 cases. Participants in the intervention of VCO group were given standardized meals mixed with VCO developed by the DOST FNRI. Meanwhile, the control group also received the usual standardized meal but without VCO. Immediate effects of the VCO intervention were observed among 5 of the 29 patients in the VCO group who experienced decreasing signs of symptoms of COVID-19 as early as day 2, while only one patient from the control group showed similar improvement. The study revealed, moreover, the VCO group experienced no more symptoms at day 18, while the control group exhibited no symptoms at day 23. More importantly, the study revealed that meals mixed with VCO could alleviate COVID-19 symptoms, thus preventing the progression of severity of the disease. The VCO compounds not only reduce the coronavirus count by up to 90%, but also improved cell survival of patients with COVID-19. This is actually supported by our results on biochemical markers, which is actually the C-reactive protein. C-reactive protein is a quantitative marker that is used to monitor the inflammation or the presence of inflammation or infection. As CRP level goes back to values less than 5 milligrams per liter, this signifies recovery from inflammation or infection. Now you can see the blue line wherein our VCO, this represents our VCO group. It has continuously declined below the threshold of 5 milligrams per liter of CRP, and it goes as low as 2 milligrams per liter, compared with our group, the control group, which had actually plateaued at a level of 5 milligrams per liter until the end of the study, which is the end of 28 days. These findings, which proves that the VCO were able to enhance the immune system of patients, can greatly help in our fight against pandemic. Once the sequel research and development are completed, VCO can be used as an adjunctive therapy that could prevent COVID-19 from becoming severe. Aside from aiding COVID-19 efforts, another important impact of this study is potentially boosting the coconut industry and eventually the country's economy. With renewed public interest in VCO and other coconut oil's alternative health benefits, stakeholders are seeing a 20% growth in the demand by 2022. Currently, the project was expanded to include Valenzuela City and the Hospital ng Muntinlupa as additional sites. The project now includes symptomatic RT-PCR confirmed COVID-19 patients to participate in this study. If this study confirms our previous findings in the Santa Rosa study, we can disseminate this to DOH and have VCO be an adjunctive therapy for COVID-19 patients. This study was actually, through this project, will not only be providing a solution to the challenges brought about by the pandemic, will also recover, but will also aid the recovery of the Philippines economy. And virgin coconut, this study was made successful due to the support of the collaborative of the Department of Science and Technology, Food and Nutrition Research Institute, the Philippine Council for Health Research and Development, or the DOSTP-CHRD, the Department of Science and Technology Calabarzon, or Region 4A, City of Santa Rosa, Laguna, and the Ateneo de Manila University. Virgin coconut oil, potential as a treatment for the novel coronavirus, highlights the versatility and sheer usefulness of coconut. As the world begins to recognize the true potential of the so-called tree of life, we are expecting consumption and production to rise in the next 5 years. Ultimately, through this project, we will not only be providing a solution to the challenges brought by the pandemic, but will also aid the recovery in the Philippine economy. Together with our team, Dr. Toby Dairit, Jacus Nasis, and Dr. Mario Capansana, please join us and let's actually all solicit the support of the stakeholders to make this happen. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agdepa. for sharing the results of your study and your team study, recently published, I understand, at the Journal of Functional Foods.
Yes.
Our audience may wish to know more later during the open forum. We wish to enjoin our webinar participants to start typing in their questions at the Q&A box, which you might wish for Dr. Agdepa to address later. Now, I wish to introduce our next resource person, Dr. Fabian Toby Dayrit. Dr. Dayrit is an emeritus professor at the Department of Chemistry, Ateneo de Manila University, Philippines. He obtained his Bachelor's of Science degree in chemistry at the Ateneo in 1975, and his Master's and Doctoral degrees in chemistry from Princeton University in 1978 and 1981, respectively. He was a postdoctoral research associate at Oxford University in 1980 to 1982, University of Tokyo in 1993, and the University of Minnesota in 1994. Dr. Dayrit was admitted as an academician to the National Academy of Science and Technology Philippines in 2009 and is currently its vice president. In 2016, he was appointed chair of the Scientific Advisory Committee for Health of the International Coconut Community. His main areas of research are in the chemistry of medicinal plants, coconut oil, and environmental science. In 2013, he wrote the book Coconut Oil from Diet to Therapy, which reviewed the main issues regarding coconut oil and its numerous beneficial effects. He has published 68 papers in peer-reviewed journals and has edited 2 volumes of the Encyclopedia of Philippine Medicinal Plants, with Volume 3 about to be printed. He continues to work on quality aspects and health benefits of virgin coconut oil and is a co-author of the published paper about the study earlier presented by Dr. Agdepa. Dr. Dayrit will expound on the hypothesis for the efficacy of virgin coconut oil and also on possible areas of collaboration. The audience is invited to type in questions in the Q&A box about Dr. Dayrit's presentation as well. So Dr. Dayrit, it's great to see you again. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Joy. And good morning, greetings to everyone. Heads of posts of the Philippine Foreign Service of the Americas, friends from the US government, members of the Coconut Coalition of the Americas, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I've entitled my talk, VCO as Functional Food versus COVID-19, Seeking Evidence for its Mild and Wide-Ranging Efficacy. As Dr. Agdepa already presented, the data on the study that we conducted on probable mild cases of COVID-19, what I will do in this presentation is provide the basis which we think will support its efficacy against COVID-19. Okay. In January 2020, during the very early stages of the pandemic, Dr. Mary Newport and I wrote a paper which we posted on the internet suggesting the use of coconut oil against the novel coronavirus. While some of the initial details that we described last year have changed, the proposal to use VCO against this disease has been validated, but more work needs to be done. The focus of this analysis was lauric acid. So my presentation this morning is in 4 parts. First, I will talk about strategies against COVID-19. Second, VCO is a multifunctional food. And then talk about the evidence for the efficacy of VCO versus COVID-19 and next steps. Although COVID-19 was first identified as a respiratory disease called ARDS for acute respiratory disease syndrome It is now recognized as a systemic disease which can attack the gastrointestinal system, the liver, the heart, the kidney, brain, blood vessels, and others. Serious illness is usually due to severe inflammation from an overreaction of the immune system called the cytokine storm. And COVID-19 survivors are known to suffer effects known as long COVID. The usual strategy is to develop antiviral drugs, prime the immune system, and dispense anti-inflammatory drugs, many of which are steroids, which cannot be taken for a long time. Last month, Dr. Depa and our group published a paper describing the first double-blind placebo-controlled clinical trial on the use of VCO against COVID-19. As clinical studies go, this was a modest study, but enough to give statistically valid results. It is important to demonstrate success as we can go, after which we can go to bigger studies and more critical cases. These studies are currently ongoing. So this was a study which Dr. Agdepa just presented. So what is it about VCO? Virgin coconut oil comes from the fresh coconut meat, which contains about 35% coconut oil. So you harvest the coconut, take the coconut, fresh coconut meat, dry it, and you can obtain VCO via 3 processes. The first, as shown in the slide, is the expeller method, wherein you pass the coconut meat through a screw press and press out the VCO. Or you can do the wet process, where you obtain coconut milk, and from coconut milk, you can use a centrifuge, which then you spin the coconut milk at a high rate and separate the oil layer from the aqueous layer by its rotational forces, and you get your VCO. The most traditional method is the fermentation method, which uses lipase enzymes and bacterial enzymes to separate the oil from the aqueous solution. And from this, you also get VCO. Now, all 3 types of VCO have the same beneficial effects, but they have different characteristic taste. So what is it about coconut oil? Well, I'm showing here the fatty acid profile of coconut oil. So coconut oil is, as you know, is mainly made of saturated fatty acids. The most important, or by composition, is lauric acid, which is a 12-carbon fatty acid, which accounts for about half of the fatty acid composition of coconut oil. Now, lauric acid has been shown to be antiviral and antibacterial in many other previous studies. So this was the basis for our hypothesis in January of 2020 that lauric acid would be the active, or rather the most active fatty acid in VCO. Now I'd like to discuss some key properties of lauric acid. So the question is, why is lauric acid so special? Well, first, lauric acid is not endogenously produced by humans, except lactating mothers. In other words, lauric acid, of course, it comes from the coconut, but it is not produced by the body. The body, the liver, the first fatty acid which the liver produces is palmitic acid, or C16 acid. So if you ingest lauric acid, it has its metabolism is not the usual metabolism which the body produces, because the body itself does not produce lauric acid. Interestingly, lactating mothers, they produce this in mother's milk, and lauric acid is believed to provide antiviral and antibacterial protection for the newborn baby. Lauric acid is a medium chain fatty acid. Medium chain fatty acids are made up of fatty acids from 6 carbons to 12 carbons long. However, some consider lauric acid as an intermediate fatty acid because it has special properties. So it is longer than it's on the the long length of medium chain fatty acids. So it still is metabolized quickly, but it has other particular properties. Lauric acid is not stored as fat and is eventually used for energy by the body. It has a lifetime of about 4 hours in the bloodstream. So the effects of lauric acid would last for about 4 hours, and this is the reason for the recommendation that VCO, if you're going to take it, you should take it, with meals, so about every 4 hours. VCO can be a functional food versus viruses, and this is the evidence from the literature. So this is already published evidence. As an antiviral, monolaurin is able to disintegrate the viral membrane, and this is other viruses, and lauric acid inhibits viral maturation. Secondly, on the immune system, and this again from the literature, in vitro studies shows that it increases T cell production, and clinical studies, and this was a study done by my father in about 1998 in HIV patients. It increases the level of CD4 and CD8 cells in HIV patients. And it is also anti-inflammatory. Again, from the literature, in vitro studies shows that it lowers the interleukin 8, and in animals, it also lowers the induced nitric oxide. So what is evidence for efficacy of VCO versus COVID-19? There are 3 proposed mechanisms by which VCO, and in particular lauric acid, works against COVID-19. First, as already mentioned, it disrupts the coronavirus lipid membrane. Second is a phenomenon which I call metabolic rescue. And third is its anti-inflammatory and immunomodulatory properties. Now, lauric acid is in publications already shows, it's already been shown to have antimicrobial activity. Shown here are a long list of bacteria. So some of these are, quite serious bacteria of serious concern. H. pylori, Staphylococcus aureus, methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, Streptococcus, bacteria. But also at the bottom of this list, you have viruses against which lauric acid has been shown to be active against. So it's herpes simplex type 1, HIV, the Junin virus, and vesicular stomatitis virus. So lauric acid in the literature has been shown by numerous literature studies to have these activities. So the question is it active against coronavirus? We're all told to wash our hands often to kill the virus because soap, the surfactants in the soap are able to destroy the lipid membrane of the virus. So the lipid membrane is, well, it's lipids, and the property of surfactants is that it's able to insert between the layers of the lipid membrane and damage it and then destroy the virus. In a way, coconut oil, when you ingest it, releases the fatty acids released from ingestion of coconut oil by the lipase enzyme, produces compounds such as monolaurin, which is a monoglyceride or a derivative compound of lauric acid, as well as lauric acid itself. And these compounds also have surfactant effects. So the compounds from released upon ingestion of VCO are also able to destroy the lipid bilayer. Now, does it work against coronavirus? I will show you some publications, and these are publications. This one in particular is 1987, inactivation of envelope viruses and killing of cells by fatty acids and monoglycerides. So here they compared a number of saturated fatty acids from caprylic acid, which is a C8 acid in this table, all the way to stearic acid, C18 acid. And this table shows that the most active fatty acids were capric acid, which is a C10 fatty acid, and lauric acid, which is C12 fatty acid. So they concluded that lauric acid and capric acid caused a complete disintegration of the envelope and the viral particles. Another publication in 1982, in vitro effects of monolaurin compounds on envelope RNA and DNA viruses. So in this study, they used a coronavirus model, coronavirus 2293. And in the figure, in the images shown, they show that the in B and C, which contains monolaurin, the viral particles are disintegrated in the presence of monolaurin. So this is an early study on another coronavirus type of coronavirus, showing the efficacy of lauric acid, monolaurin. Now this is the viral life cycle. So step one would be here, where this is SARS-CoV-2 attaches to the ACE2 receptor, and then it is brought into the cell, and it replicates itself and exits with more particles, and in the process it destroys the cell. So we conducted this study around April of last year, an in vitro study on the SARS-CoV-2 virus itself. This work was done in Singapore. So here are the compounds that we're referring to. So this would be lauric acid and monolaurin. So in this in vitro study, we're able to show that outside the cell, these two compounds, lauric acid and monolaurin, were virucidal at low viral load. So in this graph, you can see that the viral load would drop from control to monolaurin plus this is sodium laurate, a salt of lauric acid, and sodium laurate. So the study concluded that monolaurin and lauric acid showed 60 to 90% virucidal efficacy versus SARS-CoV-2, but at low viral load. If the viral load is high, then you don't see this effect. Now the question here is how much lauric acid and monolaurin are needed, and what are the best conditions for efficacy? So this was a in vitro study, and so it would be of interest to find out in a physiological system how much, and if you had measure the viral load of a person, how much lauric acid and monolaurin are needed to show the virucidal effect. So this aspect needs to be studied further. Now, the second mechanism that we'd like to propose is what I call the metabolic rescue. Now, if you go back to the viral life cycle, and this is the in vitro study, we're able to show that conclude that inside the cell, the presence of lauric acid and monolaurin enhanced cell survival. Now, how can we show that? Well, in this figure, if there is viral inhibition, the expected plot would be this dotted red line. What we observed in the control, this is the control would be without lauric acid or monolaurin, the virus concentration would increase, but then after one day, the virus would kill the cell, and the virus concentration would decrease because then the virus cells that were producing the virus were being killed. So this was the cytopathic effect that you would see. And that was the control situation where there is no monolaurin or lauric acid. Now, what we observed in the test cells is if you follow this line, so the virus concentration increases because the cells are alive, but then the virus concentration then tapers off, but the cells do not die. So the implication here is that the cells survive in the presence of monolaurin and lauric acid. So this is the hypothesis that we formed, is that the presence of lauric acid and monolaurin enable the cells to survive, at least in this experiment, beyond 3 days. So the question here is, what is the mechanism for this metabolic rescue? Is there a basis for hypothesizing metabolic rescue? This is a study which is a hypothesis which links SARS-CoV-2 to COVID-19 effects via this receptor called PPAR. So this figure on the left shows that SARS-CoV-2 attacks the PPAR. PPAR is a nuclear receptor, and what it does, the viral infection alters lipid metabolism and the endothelial function, contributing to inflammation and detrimental systemic consequences. So if you notice the arrows, it downregulates PPAR expression. PPAR is important for lipid metabolism in cells. So lipid oxidation falls, apoptosis, the cell death, increases, and you have aberrant metabolism. So the metabolism then is becomes abnormal. You get lung injury, and in the end, you get mortality. In endothelial cells, so this would be the lining in the blood vessels, the same thing would happen. You have lipid oxidation and so forth, inflammation, and you get fatigue, cardiopulmonary function, and decreased physiological capacity. Now, in the presence of lauric acid blocks the, is hypothesized, is to block this SARS-CoV-2 attack on the PPAR, and the parameters will then be stopped. So lipid oxidation continues, apoptosis, which is cell death, will drop, aberrant metabolism also falls, and the COVID-19 mortality will then fall as well. The same thing would happen in the endothelial cells, where lipid oxidation also increases, inflammation decreases, and so forth. So it is proposed that the agonist property, meaning the property of of lauric acid to promote PPAR expression, may block the detrimental effects of the virus, thereby rescuing the cell's metabolic functions. So this is the hypothesis we have in proposing that lauric acid has the property of metabolic rescue. So if we go back to the viral life cycle, in this slide, I summarize both effects. So outside the cell, lauric acid and monolaurin are virucidal at low viral load. And inside the cell, it's able to enhance cell survival. So these were the results from our in vitro study. Now, what is interesting here is that both mechanisms do not act on viral proteins. We know that the concern we have about the virus is that the RNA mutates. And if the RNA mutates, then the proteins of the virus also mutate. But since VCO does not depend on the viral proteins, in fact, VCO works on the body cells themselves, not on the inside, not the viral proteins. So the hypothesis here is that VCO activity should not be affected by viral mutations. If you note, outside the cell, the monolaurin and lauric acid do not attack the proteins of SARS-CoV-2. It attacks the membrane. Inside the cell, it does not attack the proteins of the viral proteins, but it works on the body's own cells. In this case, in the example I showed, the PPAR receptors. Now, the third proposed mechanism of the efficacy of VCO is that they are anti-inflammatory and immunomodulatory. Now, for this, we do not have direct evidence yet, although the results that Dr. Agidapa showed is that the C-reactive proteins drop, which means that the anti-inflammatory effects on the patients that took VCO, inflammation decreased. What we have right now and would be evidence from other anti-inflammatory and immunomodulatory properties of VCO, and we will be working on the anti-inflammatory and immunomodulatory properties on patients who are afflicted with SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19. So these are some evidence of the health benefits of VCO, the anti-inflammatory properties. In this case, the study was done on the phenolics found in VCO. So VCO contains small amounts of phenols, which are antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. In this study, this is a study of arthritis in rats. And the images here show the normal condition. And then they made the rat arthritic. So this is the arthritic condition. And in the presence of VCO, the arthritic condition decreased in the presence of VCO. This study shows the anti-inflammatory properties of VCO. So virgin coconut oil enhances neuroprotective and anti-inflammatory factors in the thymus and mesenteric lymph nodes of rats. In the conclusion of the study, they said dietary VCO might modulate immune responses by upregulating neuroprotective factors and suppressing inflammatory mediators and oxidative stress through intracellular signaling pathways. So we believe that such anti-inflammatory properties might be operating in VCO in SARS-CoV-2. This study entitled Virgin Coconut Oil Modulates T-CD4 plus and T-CD4 8+ cells in doxorubicin-induced immune suppressed rats. Doxorubicin is an anti-cancer drug which suppresses the immune system. And so the rats would then, the CD4 and CD8 levels would decrease. So as you can see in the table, in the control, we have the values of CD4 and CD8. If you add doxorubicin, these values drop. So from 17.9 to 7.7%, and from 11.9 to 5.5%. But then if you add VCO plus doxorubicin, the amount of CD4 plus increases, and the CD4 8+ also increases. So this is evidence for the ability of VCO to increase the immune system of, in this case, the rats. So we believe that VCO can be a functional food against COVID-19. And these are evidence both from in vitro studies and the clinical studies that Dr. Agidapa described. So it shows antiviral properties, and the additional evidence we have is the in vitro study. Immune system, we do not still have enough evidence, specific evidence against COVID-19, and this is something we have to work on. The anti-inflammatory property was shown by the clinical study, where the symptoms decreased and inflammation via the monitoring the C-reactive protein also decreased. But certainly further studies need to be made, especially on serious COVID patients. So what are the next steps? Well, we believe that we've just really started the clinical studies, and it has to be followed up by more clinical studies. So pursuing further studies to elucidate the three proposed mechanisms. So we need more specific studies and to observe disruption of the coronavirus lipid membrane, learn more about the phenomenon of metabolic rescue against COVID-19 and the anti-inflammatory and immunomodulatory properties of VCO. So these are studies which we'd like to understand the mechanism more. Now, regarding clinical studies, we'd like to study prophylaxis using VCO as protection against COVID-19. Look at the effects of VCO on mild and serious COVID-19 patients. See whether VCO can manage the cytokine storm. VCO can actually improve patient care because as we already know, VCO is antibacterial. And for patients in the hospital, VCO can actually be very beneficial in terms of skincare, bed sores and those things. And since it's antibacterial and it's very good on the skin, it's actually very good for patient care. We'd like to look at the effect of VCO on patients with long COVID effects. And also interesting whether VCO in combination with vaccine would improve the performance of vaccines. And finally, we would like to promote a global solidarity trial on VCO. There are studies, obviously we're doing studies in the Philippines. Indonesia is doing studies, but it would be good to have other countries who have VCO to also do their similar studies, and we can put them all together and have more patients to show really how that VCO is effective against COVID-19. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and hopefully we can have VCO and get rid of COVID-19. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. David, for that very interesting presentation. And we note your observation that VCO has the potential of being effective, but you would still require further studies. So now we will begin the Q&A session of our webinar and get to some, if not all, of the questions that our audience have put forward. Maybe just to start from the basics, I know, and this is for both of you, Dr. Agdepa, Dr. David, however you may want to respond. You've described like how virgin coconut oil is obtained and I guess how it might differ with regular coconut oil, but could you just expound a little more why the exploration is around VCO over the regular coconut oil?
Well, I think part of that is a matter of taste. VCO is really more palatable than regular coconut cooking oil. And well, also VCO would have more of the the natural benefits of coconut oil, since cooking oil it's refined, bleached and deodorized. So although the lauric acid content would be similar, I think in terms of palatability and I guess purity, VCO would be better than the refined coconut oil.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to add something, Dr. Agdepa?
Yes, apart from Dr. Diary's answer, it's actually also the decreasing amount of polyphenols when it is actually processed, because cooking oils are processed, right? So since VCO is processed freshly from coconut oil, so we can retain most of the nutrients in the coconut.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Mel, Dr. Toby. And then I believe it was mentioned that that you still have to do studies as to how much is needed to administer to make it really effective, how much of lauric acid and monolauric acid should be provided. But in your study, Dr. Mel, Dr. David, how much of coconut oil has been given to patients? What's the frequency? And maybe just an idea like how much cost per day of coconut oil was given to the patients.
Yeah, Dr. Mel can answer that.
Mhm.
You're muted.
Yeah, Dr. Dairit, actually, when we were conceptualizing the study, Dr. Dairit also gave us also the dosage. So for the first 3 days, we gave about 0.6 ml per kilogram body weight. So if a man weighs 50 kilograms, that will be equal to about 1 or 2 tablespoons per day. So for the succeeding 4 days until the 28 days, we increase it to 1.2 ml per kilogram body weight. And that's equivalent to 3 tablespoons per day. So we serve the VCO mixed with the meal 3 times a day, because we serve the meal 3 times a day. So that's the doses.
Okay, ma'am. You have any estimate of the cost per day if that's the dosage?
Do you know the cost, Dr. Dairit? Because the coconut oil or the VCO used in this study was donated by the Philippine Coconut
Okay.
Authority.
Yeah.
So
Well,
Okay. Go ahead.
maybe to give you, but this is in Philippine pesos. You convert it. I don't know how much VCO costs in the US. Let's say if you had a 330 ml, it's about 200 pesos for you have a calculator. 330 ml is about 200 pesos. Now, let's just say a person takes 30 ml, so 2 tablespoons a day. So that's 330 ml would last you for about 11 days. So, well, 11,
$4, 200 pesos, yeah.
yes,
so maybe 50 cents per
affordable.
day, or yeah, something like that.
yes, 50 cents.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, maybe
and,
next. Yeah, the dosage that was mentioned, actually, that's the traditional dosage. That's why when I say, well, there's certain things you have to put into the equation. One is we know that the lauric acid stays in the bloodstream for about 4 hours. It's eventually metabolized. Secondly, so you have to take it, regular periods. The 3 tablespoons a day was really estimated from the diet of the Bicolanos. So this was in the 1980s when the first study, in fact, the first study was done in FNRI. They had a survey and they showed that the Bicolanos had, better, less atherosclerosis, and they estimated how much they take. So they estimated, since they eat a lot of coconut.
Gata.
Yeah, the gata. So they said, they take an average about 3 tablespoons worth in their food. And that's where the first estimate of 3 tablespoons a day came out. So that's a traditional, dosage from food. So, yeah. So now, if you want to make it more scientific, then this is when the clinical studies would come in. But then you have to measure, how much lauric acid remains in the bloodstream and how effective it is, that sort of thing. So you need a bit more biochemical details on the metabolism of lauric acid.
Yeah, the study, Dr. Dairit, is more on a dose response study, right? Yeah.
Yes, and there's a question in the Q&A box. I know Dr. Agdepa responded to it, but if I may read it aloud, so I think other attendees might not see the answer. So the question was, is it safe for people with specific comorbidity, hypertension, and those with elevated high cholesterol levels to use the VCO?
Yeah. Actually, in our study, we excluded patients or cases with uncontrolled hypertension, with diabetes and high cholesterol levels, because this might affect the results of our study, since we are interested only on the effect of VCO on COVID-19. We excluded those comorbidities because we are expecting that this might be the confounding factors in our data analysis. So however, it is in our pipeline of research and development, wherein we also will take a look on the effects of VCO for those who are having these comorbidities.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Depa. And then in the chat box, is VCO better as a preventive measure or better as medicine when one already has COVID? Your
Well,
take, please.
Well, I think, well, of course, the clinical study is a study on those already with COVID. Studying those as a preventive actually is, in fact, an article just came out in one of the medical journals questioning the challenge experiments. This is in the UK, where they vaccinate people and they challenge them with COVID. And there are ethical issues with that. So it's actually difficult ethically to prove prevention, because then you have to give two groups of people, one VCO, one without, and then you give them COVID, which ethically you really can't do. But you can do, I guess, design. I don't know. Maybe Dr. Depa knows whether you can actually design prevention wherein one group of people don't take VCO, the other group takes VCO. Whether there's a difference. I think that there are observational, observations, but actually running an experiment is maybe ethically difficult to do.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's 11 o'clock, but I hope we can take a few more questions if that's all right, Dr. Dare, Dr.
Sure,
Depa.
yeah.
Yes, it's okay.
And so there's this other question. Are all the benefits mentioned only specific to VCO due to its concentrated lauric acid or monolaurin? Or can consumption of coconuts or other coconut products like coconut butter also work?
Yes, I believe so. I think as long as you work from the meat, I think in some cases, I think the coconut butter is really VCO, which is frozen. So that's, since VCO melts at 25 degrees Celsius, or I think that's 77 Fahrenheit. When it's cold, then it solidifies and people take it like butter. So if that's correct, then coconut butter that you use is actually VCO. Now the other, of course, consuming coconut-based products, this kata that we call, will have the coconut oil. The coconut water does not. So it would be products that are obtained using the coconut meat.
Okay. Yes, thank you. And on research collaboration, I know you mentioned that we need more studies to show the efficacy of laurin or monolaurin in preventing or in curing COVID. Now, how is the funding situation for further research and research collaboration? And like, for example, are you planning to extend this to other experts in other disciplines, maybe with virologists, with clinicians, and other scientists?
Oh, certainly, yes.
There?
We're always looking for collaboration. In particular, of course, the difficulty with COVID-19 is you need biosafety level 3 laboratories to actually handle the virus. Those are not yet, those will probably still be built in the future. So right now, if we want to do like in vitro studies handling the coronavirus itself, then we do need the collaboration because we don't have the proper biosafety level laboratory right now. So yeah, that would be needed for that.
Yeah, Dr. Depa, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, actually, currently we are having in the pipeline some projects using coconut already, because our aim is to really promote coconut in our country, because it is a dying industry already. So based on our conversations and dialogues with our politicians and the cabinet secretary, we are promoting actually coconut products like some sort of complementary foods coming from coconuts and so on. So actually, these are all considered in the pipeline of FNRI R&D.
Okay, thank you. I wish we had more time, but yeah, time flew by so quickly. But if I could just give you like your last words before we wrap up and end this webinar. Ladies first,
Okay, so
Dr. Depa.
I think let us all join hands in mitigating COVID-19 through science-based data or information, in order to be more efficient and effective and cost-effective in our treating or preventing to severe cases of the COVID-19 pandemic. And also, since we are all here already, I think it's high time for us also to solicit collaborative studies with other agencies in the US for us to promote the use of VCO and coconut products in actually improving the nutritional status of our children and the Filipino at large. Thank you so much.
Well said, Dr. Depa. How about you, Dr. Dayrit?
Well, I think as I try to expound on in my presentation, there's evidence that VCO works, and so what we really need to do, and you'd expect the same thing from drugs, for example, is that you want to know the mechanism, how it works. By knowing the mechanism, then you can extend that to other applications. As we believe that VCO will have beneficial effects for other viruses. Right now we have this COVID-19, but since the VCO does not attack, except for the membrane, it doesn't attack the proteins of the virus. So mutation of virus should not affect it. The aspect of the metabolic rescue is, I think, quite important, because we're talking about the basic metabolism of the cell, which lauric acid is able to intervene. Now, those are aspects that I think need to be studied further, and I think the overall implications of learning more about that would be quite significant.
Dr. David, Dr. Agdepa, thank you so much for sharing with us your expertise and knowledge. We hope to highlight more of the work of esteemed Filipino scientists like yourselves in future science webinars of the Embassy. The discussions about virgin coconut oil and the exploration around it are very interesting and very promising. And before we wrap up our event today, may I enjoin everyone, please, for a moment of silence to offer a prayer as we join the Philippines in mourning the passing of former President Benigno S. Aquino this morning of June 24, 2021. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Again, we'd like to thank our speakers for their very informative presentations. And we'd also like to acknowledge our wonderful audience for listening and for participating in our webinar today. We hope that this has generated a lot of interest and perhaps lead to further research collaboration on virgin coconut oil and its benefits. The webinar recording will be posted at the Philippine Embassy's Facebook account, should you wish to review it or share it with others who may be interested. And as I wrap up and complete my tour of duty as Philippine Agriculture Attaché to the United States of America and the Americas from this embassy here in Washington, D.C. this month of June of 2021, please allow me to also say farewell, thank you, and until we meet again, to everyone, whom I have worked with, some of whom may be tuning in today or in the future to this webinar. It has been a pleasure, a privilege, and an honor. And finally, happy National Coconut Day in the USA on Saturday, June 26. Congratulations to the Coconut Coalition of the Americas for this annual celebration of the Tree of Life and for working together in the coconut industry to maintain high quality standards and preserving the integrity of the wide array of coconut products available in the Americas. On behalf of the Embassy of the Philippines in Washington, D.C., thanks to everyone for joining us in this event. This is Agriculture Attaché Dr. Joy Havalosa signing off for now. Keep well and safe. Cheers to science and the quest for further knowledge. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Good luck on your
Thank you po.
posting. Sige.
Thank you.
Sige.
Maraming pong salamat. So